For the sake of brevity, I'm going to be probably most of the time using him, his pronoun, not because it's all about the guys, but because pronouns are getting more and more confused all the time, and it's just the way it is. Please understand, him, his, he is going to stand for any gender you care to think of. Right. What I'm going to be talking about is the reevaluation and rehabilitation process as I try to practice it with people who come to me. It's not the only way. It may not even be the best way. It is the way that I know best because I've been working on this for the best part of 30 and some years. What I call the reevaluation process or the reevaluation dialogue consists broadly of enabling someone involved in an authoritarian movement or sect to reconsider their commitment to the group of which he has been a member, to look at it from a broader perspective that includes facts which may not have been available from within the group, and to decide whether or not continued involvement in that group is in his best interest. During this process, he also will consider the group's effect on his life in general and on his relationships in particular. It must always be an open question in the mind of the counselor whether the member progresses on to leaving their sect and begins rehabilitation, or whether he returns to the group. The primary goal and the priority of the reevaluation dialogue must be to enable the member to make a free and informed choice. With this in view, I believe that informed consent should be gained from the group member in all cases before the reevaluation process begins. I was delighted to hear what Hannah said about that. I also have been in the situation of having to physically walk someone out of a room and out of a building where they had been tricked or, in some cases, bullied into sitting through what was supposed to be some kind of, I don't know, magical process or something that was supposed to make them change their mind. And I have had to take people out of situations like that. So I really appreciate that, Hannah. It's nice to hear that kind of feedback, and it was nice to hear from you, Nan, about what you had to say about Ted Patrick's version of how to help people. I found him difficult to think about. And when people would come to me and ask me, what do you think of Ted Patrick's book, I would say, I'd rather not talk about it. That's not what I do. And that's all so thank you very much. Where there is a possibility of uncertainty about the individual's willingness or later feelings, I have gone so far as to ask the member to confirm his consent in writing to a voluntary contact with me in exchange for a written undertaking from me concerning my responsibilities towards him. The underlying principle here is safety. You're asking someone who is filled with fear because they have been taught to be fearful, and you're asking them to be in a fundamentally terrifying place. Imagine someone with a phobia of spiders being asked to sit in a room full of spiders. That's how I think of this. And so my first rule is to make them know I will protect them. I will protect them from me. I will protect them from their loved ones who've brought them to the room with me, or whomever has gotten them there. I will protect them first and foremost. That has to be the first rule for me. Regardless of the form of consent, I think it's important that the counselee should understand and agree to the nature and the approximate duration of the reevaluation dialogue and to any other necessary arrangements. And that I established by an initial conversation. I will say to them, how do you feel about sitting with me for 4 hours today, or 6 hours today, or maybe 4 hours today and another 4 hours tomorrow, with breaks every 2 hours? How do you feel about that? I also tell them that even after we have a framework, if they change their mind and they want to get up and leave, I will make sure that they get back where they're going safely. First and foremost, they have to know they are not under any duress, they are not under any coercion, they are not in danger. I'm not going to hurt them. If a member lives within the sect's own housing, it may be necessary to arrange suitable accommodation to provide a neutral and unstressful setting where the reevaluation dialogue may take place. Often this is best accomplished in the home of a sympathetic family. I tend not to use their own family's home unless they agree to that, because it's no longer neutral territory. Okay? It was neutral territory before. In fact, it was safe territory. They grew up in it. This was in a family of the people who loved them. It was a good place to be. Now, they have been told, your parents are evil. They're demons. They're this, they're that. They're going to hurt you. But if we can find someone neutral, maybe a friend or a college friend or something like that, someone neutral who will host it and who will help me to make everyone comfortable, or sometimes even in a place like this, I have met with more families than I can count in a small room, smaller than this one of those little kind of conference rooms that you get in hotels where it's just a table and you sit around the table and you talk. It's neutral. They know that all they have to do is walk through the door and they're in public and they're safe. The reevaluation process, this mysterious diagram here, we were trying to figure out what to do to make it easier to see, but the problem is it was made in Word 5.5 for DOS back in, 1989 or 1990 or something, and all I've ever done is convert it over into newer versions of Word, and it actually isn't very manipulable. So one of these days I will work on that. That was meant to be turned into a transparency, and has been turned into a transparency for an OHP machine. So it's not very helpful, really, but I'll try to tell you what you're looking at. I base what I do around 10 activities that I consider helpful for people. Those activities, they can look on a diagram like that, like stages, like you go here, then you go there, then you go there, like a recipe. They aren't in reality, and every person's a little bit different. This first stage over here is, generally speaking, the reevaluation process. The rest of it is if they decide to leave. And that's why you see there's that little red circle there. They either go back to their group, and as I say, I help them with that if they need help, or they decide to leave. And if they agree after they leave, if they say, well, I would like some help with this, then I provide the help. And I'm going to describe what I do. I refer to these things sometimes as assisted activities because although some people can work through all of this by themselves, and we have had people here this week who have managed to do most of this, if not all of it, for themselves without help, sometimes people just find they need help. It can be difficult. For some people, it can be impossible, depending on what happened to them in their group, to do all these processes. So let's look at what these processes are. The first one at the top there, the number one that you can't see, I call review. And in that, I invite the member to talk through their original reason for committing themselves to the group and to talk about the grounds of their involvement. It gives them a chance to hear themselves, talking to themselves and to me, what the group originally meant to them. It also means that I get to hear what the group is to them. I have another principle that I consider to be important here, and that is that whatever group we're talking about, this week Scientology, each member has a slightly different experience, and therefore each member has joined a slightly different group. There are people here who have no idea what it's like to experience some of the things that other people have suffered through, and vice versa. Each person has his unique experience. I don't need to know only what is the standard Scientology experience, because there isn't necessarily a standard Scientology experience. What I need to know is, in addition to the standard experience that Scientology intends you to have, what did you really have? And so by inviting them to talk to me, it allows me to understand their particular experience, and that helps me to know what they need from me. The second is the reevaluation proper. And in that, we talk over the quality and the results of their commitment. So, characteristic, I had a conversation with a Scientologist few years back now, he had body routed me in to do a personality test. And we ended up talking, and one of the parts of what we talked about was when I asked him why he joined, and he told me, one of the things he told me was that he had trouble with the kinds of relationships he had, because he would get into a relationship with a girl and it would fall apart, and then he'd feel really terrible. And he just found it really difficult to get over how terrible he felt. He told me a few other things which I won't bother with, but that was one of them. And when I asked him how Scientology had helped him with that, we kind of talked around that for a bit. The final answer was that, in fact, he didn't have time for any relationships. That's how Scientology had solved his problem with relationships. They just took them away. By allowing him to talk to me around about that subject until he came to the cognition, if you will, that Scientology had solved the problem by taking away the opportunity that came with that problem, it left him with something that I hope helped him later on to say, how is this really helping me after all? That's what I try to do in the reevaluation. Encourage them to think, what is this doing to my self-image? What is this doing to my satisfaction or dissatisfaction with my life? The original idealism that I went into the group to satisfy and to fulfill, what happened to that? Most of the people I've spoken to went into their group with dreams and hopes and aspirations to make their lives count for something and to make a difference in their world. What happened to their idealism? It enables them to talk about that. What happened to their health? What happened to relationships? What happened to their potential? I was once brought a man who was a month and a half away from finishing his PhD in mathematics. And he quit his group. We were able to talk. What happened to your mathematics, your fascination and your love for mathematics? We were able to talk that through. Point 3 is the decision process. It's up to that person to decide. At this point, this is one of the places where my promise to protect a member is most important, because at that point, mom or dad or husband or wife or whomever will be trying to put pressure. Oh, it's really important you come out now. In the reevaluation process proper, stage 2, we had already talked with any family members who were present about how they saw things. And that's a whole other thing that I can't fit in now, but it's something that I call a mediated dialogue, where I get the family members to talk through how they each feel about what has happened to their relationship together as a result of joining this extremist group, whatever it may be. But this stage 3 is where I get everyone to back off and let the member decide, what do I think? I've been bombarded with all this new stuff. What do I think? And as I say, if they want to go back, I make sure they get back. If they're ready to leave, I give them the option to have someone like myself talk to them and help them through. And the reason I say help them through is because I'm not looking simply to get a person to leave. That's not where I stop. That's where I start. The really important job is what I call rehabilitation or recovery. The first thing I look to do, and it's not, again, this chart is perhaps misleading. It makes it seem like these things are happening independently of one another. They're not. Think more of a rope where all the strands are woven together to interact with one another. The first element of that is reality testing, encouraging them to see how reality has been changed for them. I was talking to someone earlier this week about one of the fundamental points of my approach to this. It's nothing new or unique to me either. It's just something that it's how I came at it from the beginning. It's my belief that we act in accordance to what we think of reality. Now, it was mentioned earlier this week in a different context, but what I'm getting at here is that we learn what reality is, and we live in reality as best as we can, but we don't live in the real world. We live in our perceptions of the real world. And if our perceptions of the real world can be altered, we create a map of the world that may not match reality itself. I don't believe that I can read your minds. I don't believe that I can fly. I don't believe that I can make the chair get up and down unless I go down there and pick it up.
What about ashtray?
Well, yes, that was tricky, wasn't it? That process is something that is an alteration of my inner reality, to come to the point where I believe I could do it if I wanted to, but you'd be so overwhelmed that I'm protecting you by not showing you my OT powers. To come to that point from where I normally live is an alteration of my inner map. And so the first thing I try to get people to talk about is their reality testing, getting them to think again, how did you come to believe these new things about reality? For example, that you could survive and live not eating or drinking, but only breathing air. The client I had who came closest to dying after they left their group was someone who persisted in believing that he only needed to breathe to live. And this was very important. We didn't leave this one till later. Another aspect of this, what is there, the second one in from the left, I call worldview examination. And as you can see, these two things are very closely related. Getting the person to re-examine their worldview, getting them to ask questions about their moral values, their spiritual or philosophical concerns, and their other perceived needs. And at this point, I have to say something important. It is a kind of a truism in some kinds of psychology and some kinds of psychiatry that any religious interest whatsoever is a basically neurotic impulse and should always be discouraged or always be undermined or just be ignored out of existence. I don't do that with people. If the person has that kind of urge, I'm much more interested in getting them to evaluate what it is, why it is, and how they can pursue it safely. They can always decide at a later point, well, that's, I feel this way about it or I feel that way about it, but immediately, it's not my job to tell you, you should be a Christian, you should be Jewish, you should be an atheist, you should believe in people on Venus or 18-foot lizards that run the world or anything. It's not my job. My job is to bring a person to a place where they have recovered and they are growing and they are healing and they are able to resume a life that is meaningful to them without a boss, without a guru, without a master telling them who to be. Number 6, which is the third one in at the bottom there from the left, I call it planning. And that's encouraging a person to see that they have a future outside the group. You wouldn't believe how many people come to me and feel that life is over now. Life is just nothing. What's the point of it? Encouraging them to see that there's still a future. I've had clients who have gone on to, as older people, as older adults, have gone on to get their degrees, have gone on to build careers for themselves, have gone on to get married when they thought it's too late for them. Just all kinds of things where they thought, this is it, I've done it now. I threw my life away in the group, sometimes 12 years, sometimes 20 years, however long. What do I do now? Help them to plan, help them to begin to take short steps and get to where they would like to be, little by little by little. Making job applications, you have no idea how hard it is after you have been institutionalized in your sect, except that a lot of you people do have some idea about it. But it's, for an outsider or never in, they don't understand. Well, you just go down to the job center and you sign up and get, no, it doesn't work that way. I've had clients who had become so institutionalized that I had to teach them how to go to the fruit and veg shop and buy a banana. And the terror that they felt of going and giving their money to an impure person to buy impure food and then put that impure food in their mouths had to be seen to be understood. And they needed help to do that by a series of stages. And that's the job of recovery. That's the job of rehabilitation. Examining the past. A lot of people, and we've heard it said even here, that there was that immediate feeling, oh, my life's, I've wasted my life. I've wasted this time. I'll never get it back. It's all no good. And what do I do next? I believe in reclamation. I believe, first of all, that most people learn some things that they can use in their lives now. I have seen people who, for example, had been event organizers in the Unification Church who have come out and discovered that there is a whole career waiting for them. They've gone on to be hoteliers and things like that because they could take that skill and take it back from the sect. You took years, you took a lot of my work, you took my time, my hard sweat, and my pain, but you can't take the skill. The skill comes with me. And they've come out and they have been able to find ways of using that. Preparation, encouraging the person to select and follow through. It's easy for some members when they come out to get ideas and then just say, well, I'm afraid of what happens if I try and do that and I fail. It means that I'm no good. It means that all the things the group said are confirmed about me. No, let's do this together. Let's just talk about this. Let's fill out that form. Let's do this little thing. A lot of it is just being there for the person to encourage them. Being there to take them through step by step things that you and I might think are normal things to do. They've never done it before. Encouraging them to come along and say, I can do this. I just write this, stick it in the envelope, stick the stamp on it, put the address on it, send it, and wait and see. And that's how they make the first steps. The ninth thing is rediscovery. Learning to drive, finding a hobby, getting involved in a sport, going back to something that they knew if they had had a hobby or a sport before they joined their group. Rediscovering areas of their lives that they had been told were terrible. You've said it in this room this week. You have to hurry, you have to hustle, you have to not waste time, you mustn't, what was the word? Slag off. You have to really stick to it and make every second count. Every single group out there has a way of telling you that any second of your time and any aspect of your resources, personally or otherwise, that you don't spend on the group is wasted and will have eternal consequences. I've met people who have been told every minute you spend sleeping in bed, someone goes to hell. I've had people tell me that they were told that every minute they spent not meditating, it meant that the world stayed in illusion, and so on and so on. There's all different ways of saying this. It's the same message. If you are not dying for working for the leader tells you you're a bad person, and there's no hope. I have taken clients who have come out of their movement, walking past the park, into the park, onto the swings, sitting on the swings, and then day by day, getting them to just start moving their feet and rocking back and forth, and eventually getting them swinging, just because play is important. Play is not a waste of time. Play is important. Take them on the swings, get them on that roundabout and having fun. You should see what happens with people when, if there's somebody who hasn't played for a long time, you get them to play and just do something because it's fun. It doesn't accomplish anything. The world isn't changed by it. It's just fun. And that's one of the great things about ex-members as they're coming out. You watch them, they recover fun. They recover their sense of humor. How humorless it is to be under the thumb of a guru or a master. They come out and they learn it's okay to laugh. It's okay to make other people laugh. It's okay to laugh just because life is good again. Teaching people to do that. And finally, the release. Helping a person to carry out the progressive stages of personal rehabilitation. I don't aim to be the person that's always going to be there in their life so that 10 years from now, the person will call me up and say, I was thinking of doing this, what do you think? I'm not going to be there to do that. What I'm going to do is 10 years before that, I'm going to give them the tools, little by little, as we're going along. Everything is, what are you going to work on, not what am I going to tell you to work on. The fundamental principle of all of this is, any power I have, I surrender it. I don't collaborate, I surrender. I can always be there as a resource person, but I can never be there as a guru or a leader. And taking that person and releasing them, teaching them, here are the skills. When you feel depressed, here are some things you can do to deal with that. When you're anxious, here are some things to deal with that. When you're frightened, here are some things for the fear. When you're angry, here are some things that'll help you channel that anger into profitable and useful things. And then I get a different kind of response because that person's ready, if you like, to graduate from their rehabilitation. I mean, there are a lot of limitations to this, and I'm very aware that the time is cracking on and I want to stop. But the most important thing I can leave with you is that however you do this process, however you work at helping a person to rehabilitate, the important thing is that at every step along the way, they have as much responsibility as they can bear and as much help as they need. So that at all points, you're not only undoing the specific things that they want to talk about, but you're undoing the processes that made them the way they were in the group. You're undoing the sense that I daren't do anything independently. Jehovah's Witnesses and their independent thinking, you know. Independent thinking is a terrible sin. No, it's not. Independent thinking is how I distinguish myself from everyone else, and I make my own mind up. I give them that freedom, they take that freedom, and then they live their own lives. I want to leave you with a poem one of my clients wrote to me. They did give me permission to read it out, and I want you to hear this. No one knows what I'm thinking. Oh, by the way, the title is Now. No one knows what I am thinking. I can avoid things that make me uncomfortable, put my head under the duvet. I can not have a clue where I am going. I can deal with problems, conundrums, dilemmas. I know there are more than two answers, right and wrong. I can spend all my money on dresses and train tickets and whiskey. I can dress for me. Dress up, dress down, dress for less, dress for dinner, breakfast, brunch. Or not get dressed all day. No one knows what I am thinking. In my head, there's a garden. It has a fence. When someone gets over it, I know. I can ask them politely to use the gate next time. Or I can set the dogs on them. Sometimes I invite someone in just to sit in the sun or to talk. I can ask questions of myself, of ordinary people, of big encyclopedias and know-it-alls. And if I want to, I can decide they are all wrong and I know best. I can cancel things. I can be ill. It's not my fault. I can pass the time, do nothing in particular, dilly-dally, shilly-shally. I can be aimless, directionless, lack any sense of purpose. Sometimes no one knows where I am. I can be really negative. I can just have a bad mood. I can flirt. I can look at people and I can wish I was like them. I can play games and be really competitive. I can get angry and not hurt anyone. Sometimes I can get angry and not hurt myself. I can be alone and feel safe with my own thoughts. I can change my mind. I can be confused and uncertain. Who knows? It's one of those things. I can fall out with a friend and still have other friends. I can be looked at. No one knows what I'm thinking. I have secrets. I have days off. I sleep through the night. I can stop in the street and squish a little hedge leaf in my fingertips so that it stains my nails. I can think about myself all day. I can remember my name at all times. I don't have to think about myself all day. If my mouth is dry, 9 times out of 10, it's because I'm thirsty. I can want my mum sometimes. Thank you.